I talked about AZ Fudd a lot, folks, and said when she got back from that knee injury, remember, it's the second ACL tear she's had in her career, that she was going to be a difference maker. UConn is plus 330. They're not going to get challenged again in the Big East until they come out of conference play in a conference tournament. I still like them at plus 330 to win a national championship.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
You watch playoff games. The playoffs are all that matter, and the league's got an issue. They just don't want to admit it. They brag about how huge they are, how global they are, ratings are through the roof, profits are through the roof. I mean, between the NBA and NHL lying about their ratings and the money they make, I'm sick and tired of it.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish. Great Thursday morning to you as we're getting ready for the big hockey game tonight. Team USA versus Team Canada. We got our very own Joe Madden in the house to preview this big showdown in the Four Nations Finals, so stay on the grid for that. And, of course, we'll go over the latest and everything happening. National Basketball Association, we had one game, and it was a big upset. We'll also dive into the latest in college basketball as well, so stay with us here on the grid for that. And then naturally coming up at the end of the show, got a fun announcement to talk about here as well. So stick with us throughout the program every day, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern. First, let's start off with some news here on the show, and then we'll get to some sports betting as well. This is surrounding the upcoming Olympic Games here, which is really fascinating, considering that we're talking about travel here, which is crucial to the upcoming Olympic Games. There's a report that says the U.S. travel system is not ready for the upcoming Olympics in a couple of years. The U.S. travel system, according to this report, inadequately equipped for the millions of visitors expected to visit the 2026 FIFA World Cup, which is coming up right around the corner, and the 2028 Summer Olympics. And this is a report from a nonprofit representing the travel industry. It's called the U.S. Travel Association report that says that 40 million people could potentially visit the U.S. for the World Cup, the Olympics and Paralympics, and even the Ryder Cup, and they're not equipped necessarily to be able to handle this travel. So again, this is an independent report. I'm sure the U.S. will refute this. Naturally, keep an eye to see if the U.S. steps up their game in order to get things going in the right way. As far as the college football playoff system is concerned, we're headed toward a change. I don't think there's any question about that before we get to the beginning of the regular season and even into the summer. The SEC and the Big Ten are going to introduce a new change to the seeding for the 2025 playoffs next week. No more automatic buys for conference champions. So such as teams like Boise State, they don't get an automatic bye. In a move that will require unanimous vote, the Big 12 and the ACC are going to battle this because they're going to want their teams getting automatic buys regardless of where they're ranked. Needless to say, it does seem like the SEC and the Big Ten are driving the bus here. Stay tuned. National Football League free agency is set to begin, and we're going to see more money spent than ever before. The salary cap is going up again in the range of $277.5 million, maybe up to $281. Last year's cap, $255. So yes, it will increase by $30 million this year, $20 million the year before. Buckle up. Your favorite backup quarterback about to get paid, or two, or three. It's the way it works in the NBA. Some bad news for the Milwaukee Bucks. It was reported this morning that Bobby Portis has been suspended for 25 games for the use of performance-enhancing drugs, or basically what's called the anti-drug policy. A statement has been released by Portis' agent, said that it was a mistake. This is usually the MO for these players and these agents. Toradol is the drug of choice, apparently here, a recovery drug. Portis will miss the next 25 games. That puts him out essentially for the rest of the regular season and maybe even the postseason in the NBA. Meanwhile, last night the NBA did return. There was one game, the Los Angeles Lakers, 12.5-point favorites, and they end up losing to the Charlotte Hornets. What a huge disappointment here as you see the final score, 100-97, as the Hornets end up taking this one. Sometimes this happens, first game out of the box in the NBA, and indeed it happened yesterday. Not the best game for both Luka and LeBron, but needless to say, LeBron did his part. Some others did not. Luka, LeBron talked about the loss after the game.
I think it was good, obviously, like I said, I'm getting a little time just to adjust to everything. But I think it was fine today. I think we had some good opportunities to make shots, but we didn't make any shots, especially me. So, just get a little time to get used to it.
Yeah, for sure. And that's gonna be it every night. Obviously, myself and Luka, AR, we're gonna draw so much attention. Myself and Luka, we're gonna get double teamed a lot, and our guys got to be recipients and be ready to shoot, drive, or pass. It's easy. It's an easy game after that.
In college hoops, the number 4 team in the country goes down last night. Alabama's got to fix that defense, I think, before the NCAA tournament. Missouri put 110 on them last night. 110-98 the final. Mark Mitchell had 31 points for the Tigers. Mizzou went on a 12-0 run. They never looked back. Needless to say, it was not a great defensive performance for Alabama, and their head coach said that they could have used less turnovers as well.
We gave them 12 steals. They scored off them. We didn't do a great job prepping our guys for their pressure, and they do a good job at it. But, you kind of look at some effort stuff. I mean, Caleb Grill ends up with 25 points, but he had 10 rebounds. I mean, he had more rebounds than nobody had more rebounds than him on our team. Diabate is the only guy that had. I mean, Diabate had 10. Nobody else had more than 4. So, for our entire front court to, have 3 and 2, Jaren at 4, for their guard to out-rebound isn't that bad. I just think they wanted this game a little bit more tonight, which is a little bit disappointing because we still had a lot riding on this game. I mean, we were still in full control of our own destiny with the league championship. Had we won out, we no longer are, and Missouri deserves a lot of credit for it. So.
Yeah, I think right now Alabama has got to get things more figured out because their state mates, Auburn, just keeps rolling. Now, this was a tough game for them last night, 67-60. The Tigers end up winning. Johnny Broome had 16 points, 13 rebounds. Not the cleanest game in this one. They couldn't hit a lot of threes, but Bruce Pearl, after the game, talked about the defensive performance. Sometimes you just got to play these type games to win.
Because Arkansas is so good defensively and such a great rim-protecting team. And, our offense left a lot to be desired tonight. Our execution wasn't very good. I don't think our shot selection was great. When you only have 11 assists and 12 turnovers, I don't think we shared it as well as we have been. And but our guys competed. They did not let the fact that we weren't making shots and playing well offensively, affect their defense. Holding Arkansas to 60 points is significant. At the same time, I'm sure John probably they had a bunch of good looks. They had some open shots that if they go down, it's a different outcome. So.
Big win also yesterday for St. John's. They played DePaul. They crushed them, 82-58 the final. Also, Kentucky beats Vanderbilt, final 82-61. Those are some of the marquee games yesterday. Now, over in the Big Ten, Zach Hicks had 19 points. Penn State beat Nebraska. Final score, 89-72, ending a 7-game skid. West Virginia beats Cincinnati 62-59. R.J. Davis in North Carolina beat NC State in that matchup 97-73. And Oregon, in a very close game, goes on the road and beats Iowa by 2. Some news from Major League Baseball this morning as the New York Yankees have just announced that they have extended their manager, Aaron Boone, for the next 2 seasons, so Boone ball continues in the Bronx. Meanwhile, John Means, recovering from Tommy John surgery, once upon a time the Orioles ace, is now pitching for the Guardians. He has a team option for next season. It's unknown as to whether or not he will pitch this season. Also, the Nationals make a pitching move. Lucas Sims signs with them to a 1-year contract. Also, the new look A's, Sacramento, however you want to call the A's, looks like they're going to sign, according to The Athletic, Lawrence Butler, who had a nice year last year, 22 home runs for them, to a contract extension. And would you believe that spring training does begin today? 3:05 Eastern out in Arizona, the 2 teams that are playing overseas, they're going to go at it between the Cubs and Dodgers. By the way, the starter today for the Cubs will be Cody Poteet, and for the Dodgers, it will be Yoshinobu Yamamoto. And so spring training officially gets underway. Meanwhile, what will the American League Central look like this season? Is it up for grabs a little bit like last season where 4 teams in the division could potentially win? Well, at least according to FanDuel, that's what it seems like. So we'll bring in Matt Lutovsky coming up next of the Sporting News, and he and I will go back and forth and see if we can pick a winner to win the American League Central. You're watching NewsWire on SportsGrid, and we'll be back right after these quick messages, so don't go away.
You have Duke the 1, Houston the 2. They're the 2 best defensive teams in the country. I want to see them play for the right to go to the Final Four because I think that would be a kick-ass game.
Duke is really great on both ends of the floor. You know, they can score and they can defend, and that's why they win by big numbers all the time, because they're really good on both ends of the floor. I don't trust Houston's offense.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I talked about AZ Fun a lot, folks, and said when she got back from that knee injury, remember, it's the second ACL tear she's had in her career, that she was going to be a difference maker. UConn is plus 330. They're not going to get challenged again in the Big East until they come out of conference play in a conference tournament. I still like them at plus 330 to win a national championship.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I feel when I look at this Arizona team, I don't take them serious as a national title threat because you're asking Caleb Love to bottle magic that I just don't even think exists.
4.4, 6.6, 7.4, 7.7, 7.8. This guy is literally taking, he'll shoot you out of games, Kevin.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
2 guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Hey, the baseball season less than a month away, and spring training games begin today. Let's bring in Matt Lutovsky from Sporting News. He's got you covered with everything happening in baseball. Today, we're going to take a quick look at the American League Central. Matt, thanks for coming on the show. Let's take a look at these close odds, by the way, to win this division. I think this is the closest division maybe in baseball, where you have 3 teams that are 2-1 and then 1 3-1 to win the division. Minnesota, Detroit, Cleveland, and then Kansas City, even right there. That tells you they have no idea. We basically couldn't fit the White Sox odds on the screen, as you could see there. We had to have an extra column after they lost so many games last year. So good luck, White Sox fans. But very much up for grabs, man. I could see this coming down to last game of the season or so. It could be a fun one.
Yeah, this one definitely feels like it's going to be going down to the last week one way or another. It's just a question of which of those four teams are still going to be in the race. But very similar teams. Obviously, the makeup of each team is not exactly the same. But I think we have a lot of good pitching, got some pretty good bullpens, especially with the Guardians. And none of the lineups, I don't think, for most of these teams really jump off the page. No one's getting too excited, but they obviously all have some really good players. They all got some guys who can hit home runs, who can drive in runs. And I think that just makes them all very similar. It's tough to see a team really running away. And I think bettors look at that too. I have a theory that bettors like to look at offense. They like teams that are going to score a lot of runs and they get really excited about that. And with these lineups, you go, okay, that's pretty good. All right, they're not bad.
Right.
They got some up and comers, whatever it is. And so it's tough for any of these teams to really stand out in bettors' minds, and certainly the sports books are pricing it accordingly.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, to me, the Tigers are the most fascinating team because they kind of came out of nowhere last year. And you looked at their squad, especially Matt offensively, you're like, wait a second, how are they getting this done? It was sort of strange because nobody put up huge offensive numbers for them, but they had the best pitcher in baseball. They had a great bullpen, and that sort of carried them. So this year, they're doubling down a little bit. They've spent some nice money. They signed Jack Flaherty. He's back in their starting rotation. They've added Gleyber Torres to the infield. I don't know what that means for Javi Baez, but he'll just keep eating the money while he doesn't play, I guess. And then they signed Alex Cobb to a one-year contract. I believe Cobb may be banged up in the spring. I got to double-check that, but I think so. So, look, Tariq Skubal fronts that rotation. As I just mentioned, a couple of nice bullpen arms in the back end, 7, 8, 9. They play great defense. I know their outfield is really good, too, with Green and them. So I would expect Detroit to be in this to the end. I guess it just comes down to, as you said before we went on the air, staying healthy. Like, who's going to stay healthy for this team?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that the pitching is what's going to carry them. There's no question about that. And they have that. And that goes a long way. That's where you really get worried, though, if there is an injury to one of those top starters. But that's true of every team, of course, and always going to be true in baseball. But they have enough offense. We saw it last year. And I think, too, there's something about a team like that gets some experience, that gets a taste of winning, and they can carry it over. They have the talent. And in a division where there is no clear-cut favorite, I think, they're as good of a pick as anyone when you have the best pitcher and when you have some of these really good young players that they do have.
Yeah, I would agree. And to me, they're the most fascinating. And, I know Twins fans are like super upset. I follow that on social media. It's like, wait a second here. What are we doing? We got this nice young team, this really strong pitching staff. And, they didn't do a lot. It's almost, to me, Matt, it's like kind of running it back, so to speak. They have two of the most talented young players in baseball in Byron Buxton and Royce Lewis. And to me, it's like, okay, they're saying, all right, this is the year that these two are going to be fully healthy. And then we're going to have this starting rotation with Pablo Lopez and Joe Ryan, Ober, Paddock. This kid Woods Richardson was really good for them last year. And as long as that happens, we're in business. And Correa, too, you could throw in. But that just hasn't happened for the Twins, Matt. That's the problem.
It is the problem. And I think you're right about, okay, this is the team. Let's win with this team. And it's talented enough to win. I mean, you think about last year and how far up they were and how much they collapsed down the stretch. And you can look at that and say that's a fluke. You can look at that and say, well, that's a sign that we're not quite built for it. We need to add. I think the Twins, there's budgetary constraints, of course, but I think they looked at it and said, no, we got the team. We can win this division with what we have, and we just got to do it this year. And I think from a betting perspective, when you have a team with guys who always get hurt, it's really tough to rely on those guys. Now, is the payoff ultimately, maybe the biggest if you hit on them? Yeah, it's a nice thing to take that chance and for it to work out. But it's just really tough to do because those are such key players. And we know there's going to be injuries with every team every year. But when you have your top guys always get hurt, it makes it extremely tough to trust. But they're a very talented team. There's no question about it. They, to me, have the best lineup on paper. They have a very good rotation. Bullpen's not bad. So they can do it. They just got to do it.
Yeah, no, it's just, especially Royce Lewis. I mean, if this guy plays 150 games, I don't know what those numbers are going to look like. Maybe they'll look like Bobby Witt Jr.'s numbers, who is arguably one of the top 2 or 3 at worst best players in baseball. He is one of the favorites to win the MVP this year at plus 350, right behind Aaron Judge. My gosh, it just tells you how good he is. Gunnar Henderson off that great year, 7-1. Yordan Alvarez. I mean, Matt, it's way too early for this. I understand that. But it just goes to show you how much the odds makers think that Witt could have that majestic season this year.
Yeah, he definitely could, and I think the Royals need him to do that to carry them because, the rest of the offense is not bad by any means, but he's the key. He's the one who stands out, and as an MVP candidate, he has to carry them and help them get some of those tough wins. I think the rotation, the numbers look great. They were great last year, but you just worry a little bit about, okay, how much are they going to regress though? And how much are they going to need the offense to pick up the slack? And a lot of that's going to fall squarely on Witt Jr.'s shoulders. And when you think about it from that perspective, if they do come through, if they even get a wild card, there's a really good chance he's going to win it because he's going to have done a lot to get them there. So I think he has the talent to do that. And that just makes him sort of an intriguing bet. The odds aren't necessarily great, but he has the talent to do it. There's no question about that.
All right, 30 seconds left. Let's not get the White Sox fans upset. Their win total is 53.5 going into this season. Not that I would touch it, but this does seem like, gosh, everything went wrong for them, Matt, last year. It can't be this bad, can it?
That's what it seems like, but I think it can be. I'm not too excited about them this year, but I think you're right that it almost has to be better. Will it be good enough to hit that over? That I don't know. Not something I'd probably want to bet on personally.
Yeah, there isn't anybody here at SportsGrid who knows the White Sox opening day starter, including me. It's ugly. Thanks again, Matt, for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
All right, Four Nations preview next.
You have Duke the 1, Houston the 2. They're the two best defensive teams in the country. I want to see them play for the right to go to the Final Four because I think that would be a kick-ass game.
Duke is really great on both ends of the floor. They can score and they can defend, and that's why they win by big numbers all the time because they're really good on both ends of the floor. I don't trust Houston's offense.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I talked about AZ Fun a lot, folks, and said when she got back from that knee injury, remember, it's the second ACL tear she's had in her career, that she was going to be a difference maker. UConn is plus 330. They're not going to get challenged again in the Big East until they come out of conference play in the conference tournament. I still like them at plus 330 to win a national championship.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I feel when I look at this Arizona team, I don't take them serious as a national title threat because you're asking Caleb Love to bottle magic that I just don't even think exists.
4.4, 6.6, 7.4, 7.7, 7.8. This guy is literally taking, he'll shoot you out of games, Kevin.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. The Four Nations Final is on the ice tonight in Boston, Massachusetts, and we could think of nobody better to bring on to preview than our very own Joe Madden, because Joe's fantastic at breaking down the National Hockey League and all of the Olympics and everything else that's going on there. So I need a much better perspective as to what can happen and maybe even give a pick out or two tonight, too. Joe, it is such a pleasure to see you again. Thanks for coming on NewsWire.
Yeah, absolute pleasure to be here. And we've got a great game tonight. Team USA versus Team Canada. We know this is a rematch as well. We saw these teams face off on Saturday with Team USA getting that 3-1 win. Kind of misleading because there was that empty netter. So it was a tight, aggressive, strong physical game out there. And I'm expecting the same tonight.
Okay, so before we get to it, I know the odds there, we're going to go back to that, maybe get an opinion from you on that. There's a player on the United States that's not going to play tonight. His name is Charlie McAvoy. He played 20 minutes in one of the previous games, a good defender. He is having to be replaced in this game. And I know that that has social media buzzing a little bit with him being out, another player being in. Do you think possibly, Joe, that this affects the outcome or the play at all of this game tonight?
Yeah, it absolutely does. We look at Charlie McAvoy and how strong he is defensively, such a physical defenseman out there that does have that speed as well. And I think Team USA will really miss him. Now, prayers with him. I do believe he's still in the hospital as we speak, getting treated for an infection to an injury out there. So Charlie McAvoy will be missed on the ice. Team USA has been pretty beat up. We saw Austin Matthews miss the last game. We also saw Brady Kannon leave that game early after hitting the net. And we saw Matthew Tkachuk as well miss time out there on the ice. Now they're all saying they're healthy and they're going to be hitting the ice tonight. We'll see how Team USA can play beat up. We know one thing about these players, though. These players will play no matter what. They'll give it 150% and deal with the injuries later.
All right, fair enough. Now, tonight, it's basically even, minus 110 over on FanDuel. If you're feeling frisky and you want to take Team USA to win by 2 goals, as Joe said, it was an empty netter last time. It was a close one, but you could get plus 235 if you lay the 1.5. And the total is very similar, by the way, to an NHL game, 5.5, maybe on a little bit of the lower side based off what I've seen in the NHL. So let's start there, Joe, in this matchup. Is there any lean for you specifically on just the winner of this one?
Yeah, the winner of this one, I think John Cooper of Team Canada will have this team ready and more prepared than they were in that last game on Saturday night. Now, you have to look at their defensive player that will be playing that didn't play in that last matchup, Cale Makar. He's definitely a difference maker out here for Team Canada, and I think he can bring that defensive edge. We look at Team USA, and they're so strong on that forecheck. Matthew and Brady Kannon leading that forecheck, as well as Boldy out there. If Cale Makar can get that separation, fast, elite defensive player, he can be the difference maker out here for Team Canada to get the win. But I think this is a tight one. This isn't going to come easy. I could see this one going all the way to overtime.
Wow, that would be something there, and we're going to get to that, and I don't want to give it away, but that may be something that Joe likes tonight. Here are the odds for anytime goal scorer real quick. McKinnon and Matthews are 2-1. Connor McDavid, of course, just over 2-1. And then you have some other options there, including Jack Hughes from Team USA and Matthew Tkachuk. Anything interesting there before we get to your selections for tonight?
Yeah, well, you know Nathan McKinnon, the most competitive guy out there on the ice. We love what we saw out of him in that last game for Team Canada versus Finland. He really showed what he has out there on the ice, getting set up by Sidney Crosby. You know, Sidney Crosby has that power, and he is one of the veteran players that will need to step up for Team Canada tonight. There's no denying Connor McDavid. And then when we look at Team USA, how can you not love the value on Matthew Tkachuk? I do believe Matthew Tkachuk will play at 100% out there on the ice tonight. He'll be hungry to get those goals in the net.
All right, Joe, before you go, we'll catch you tonight, I'm sure, on In Game Live, but give us some selections that you like going into the matchup.
Yeah, looking at my best bets for tonight, I'm going to look at that first period, even though we've seen higher scoring first periods so far in the Four Nations face-off. I'm looking at the first period under 1.5 goals. I do think this is a lower scoring game overall, one that can go to overtime at plus 320. Jordan Binnington has so much pressure on him tonight. Everyone's saying if Team Canada wins, he'll be the hero. If he loses, he will be the scapegoat out there. Give me Jordan Binnington over 25.5 save shots on goal. He has to stand on his head. But Connor Hellebuyck on the other side will do so as well. Give me Connor Hellebuyck over 27.5 save shots on goal. And then Sidney Crosby for the anytime goal, Connor McDavid for the anytime goal, and then Matthew Tkachuk for the anytime goal. If you want to parlay Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid for a point tonight, you're going to get great plus money as well.
Love it, Joe. Thanks again for coming on the show. Enjoy the matchup tonight. We'll talk again soon.
It's going to be a great one. Thank you.
All right, Dexter Henry previews tonight's NBA slate next.
You have Duke the 1, Houston the 2. They're the 2 best defensive teams in the country. I want to see them play for the right to go to the Final Four because I think that would be a kick-ass game.
Duke is really great on both ends of the floor. They can score and they can defend, and that's why they win by big numbers all the time, because they're really good on both ends of the floor. I don't trust Houston's offense.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I talked about AZ Fudd a lot, folks, and said when she got back from that knee injury, remember, it's the second ACL tear she's had in her career, that she was going to be a difference maker. UConn is plus 330. They're not going to get challenged again in the Big East until they come out of conference play in a conference tournament. I still like them at plus 330 to win a national championship.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I feel when I look at this Arizona team, I don't take them serious as a national title threat because you're asking Caleb Love to bottle magic that I just don't even think exists.
4.4, 6.6, 7.4, 7.7, 7.8. This guy is literally taking, he'll shoot you out of games, Kevin.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
The 2 guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Great to have Dexter Henry in the house because maybe he can explain how we got one of the bigger upsets of the last month or so in the first game back in the NBA last night. You know, you look at a game, you're like, all right, Lakers, Hornets, we hope it's one game. Maybe the Hornets can keep it close. And then they end up winning the game outright. Dexter, what happened here?
Yeah, well, what happened was the Lakers did not look good at all defensively in this contest. I know you look at the score and say, oh, well, they didn't give up that much points, only 100 points in today's NBA, but it was a layup line to the basket, and the Hornets got hot from 3 in the second half. They couldn't miss from downtown. Luka Doncic did not have a particularly good game offensively, at least in terms of shooting the ball. 1 of 9 from downtown, 5 of 18 from the field. You don't like to see that, but these aren't good looks for the Lakers. They lost to Utah before the break. They lose to the Hornets after the break. Those are 2 of the worst teams in the NBA right now, and they've got a lot to clean up on defense. But I will say this, Craig, we have to understand they brought in Luka Doncic. These are guys getting acclimated to each other. Luka's not a good defensive player. LeBron at this stage in his career is not a good defensive player. They are missing a rim protector. They do not have one. Jackson Hayes has been playing better, but they don't really have one. And then JJ Redick likes to switch everything. And they just don't really have the personnel to do that.
Yeah, no, I mean, they made it clear when they made the trade. It was a trade for now and a trade for the future, but the now is ugly. And Luka, by the way, was 5 for 18 from the field last night, 14 points, 11 assists. I mean, I understand it, but maybe the odds makers don't, Dexter. I mean, I guess that's the issue here is how did the Lakers end up being 12.5-point favorites? And then we're sitting here saying, it's going to take time. Maybe we should be fading the Lakers indefinitely.
I mean, maybe we should. I mean, I think odds makers sometimes, Craig, are guilty as we can be as fans and even people watching the game. And we just look at the star power and say, okay, put Luka and LeBron together. They should be okay. They should figure it out. But there's more to that, right? There's the defensive side of the ball and not being able to get stops. I do think that line was a bit too high. I would have felt that way. I don't know if I'd have been confident to take the Hornets and the points totally, or take a Hornets money line. I don't think I'd be that confident at all whatsoever. But I think the odds makers are riding the wave and thinking this would have been more of a spark for the Lakers in the short term, particularly against the opponents that they had in the short term. But they do have some good competition coming up, including a game against Dallas, which should be fun this week.
Yep, fair enough. So here we go. So let's play that card, if we will, although it is the Blazers tonight. Lakers 3.5-point favorites on the back-to-back, total of 226.5. The thing with Portland, Dexter, is that they don't win a lot, but they do pull off like these wacky upsets every once in a while. Like they somehow pull it all together. It's a strange team to me.
Yeah, and they had a stretch at the end of last month and going into this month where they played pretty well. Had been winning some games, which was weird. Things seem to be going in the right way. They're not a team that I would sleep on. I thought they would have done more at the deadline to get rid of some players, but they did not. So it's very interesting. This is a team that's hungry. Scoot Henderson is playing a lot better than he has to start the season and in his rookie year. So they're dangerous. And this is a back-to-back for the Lakers. Lakers had to play that makeup game with the Hornets last night. So LeBron James, not a young man, Craig, tired legs. Luka Doncic is trying to get his legs back. He did not play good in the front end of a back-to-back. This is a tricky spot for the Lakers. They should be motivated. Another thing of note, Austin Reeves got ejected in that game last night. So that really changed a lot of things for the Lakers. I expect him to come back and be hungry. I would take the Lakers to cover here, but I'm not confident the way the Lakers defense is looking, and I'm not sure what the total is for the over-under, but you might want to hit the over in that because I think a lot of points could be scored in this one.
226.5 there. So Clippers play the Bucks tonight, and when Milwaukee and those players, Dexter, you know this from the NBA, show up today, they're going to be hit with a lot more media than normal because they got a player that was suspended for 25 games in Bobby Portis. The Bucks are favored tonight, but I know the narrative is going to be playing the distraction card. It's natural. It happens in sports. How much of this is a distraction going into tonight's game? And is this line fair? Do you think, by the way, the Clippers should be favored in this one?
Yeah, the Clippers, I think, are getting a little bit disrespected here because they're a good defensive team. They should be favored in this one. The narrative surrounding Bobby Portis and being a distraction, absolutely it's a distraction. This is also a Bucks team that is thin in terms of perimeter defense. This is a key player for them in terms of as a role player. He's one of the best role players in the league. And, you know, he's a candidate for most improved player this season. So this is huge. This is a huge loss for the Bucks. They're going to have to navigate this without him. They have just integrated Kyle Kuzma into their rotation that they're trying to adjust with moving on from Chris Middleton. So it's a lot of change for the Bucks. Dame hopefully is healthy, but I think this is a good spot to take the Clippers. I like the Clippers in this because I think the Bucks are in a period of adjustment here. I love how the Clippers defense has been playing. They've been getting some continuity, although they've added some new pieces too. But I think this is a great spot. If you like the Clippers, I might hit that Clippers money line tonight because I just like how they've been playing defensively lately.
Yeah, very, very slight plus on that money line. Same with tonight's game between the Suns and Spurs. Suns -2 on the road, -130. Spurs +110. Total 237.5. Stars out tonight. Wemby, Kevin Durant. Boy, this seems like a tough one to call for me, Dexter. Who do you like?
Tough one to call. Might be a tough one to watch as well too, Craig, right? And here's the other thing for me. There's nothing with the Suns that has made me think that I should trust anything about betting them, right? There's no reason for you to trust the Suns. You haven't seen any continuity when the stars have been there, whether it's been Durant, Booker, Bradley Beal. We know Durant's not even really happy about being there. They were trying to trade him before. So this is a Suns team that I just don't like. This Spurs team is hungry. They want to make the play-in. I understand no Victor Wembanyama, but you've got De'Aaron Fox. You got Stephon Castle playing well. He showed out in the Rising Stars Challenge at the All-Star Weekend. So I think the Spurs team is very motivated. The Suns are ahead of them. I like the Spurs in this spot because I just think the Suns are a dysfunctional mess right now. I don't trust anything about them. They're a team I just want to absolutely stay away from. Now, if there's one thing you might like in this game, too, I think you could look at that total line number where I would go over in this because these are not two good defensive teams, and the likely favorite for Defensive Player of the Year and Victor Wembanyama will not be playing in this game. So I think points will be there for sure.
Yeah, that's why the Suns are favored by 2 tonight, questionable for Wemby going into the game. Okay, so in the East, we have 3 big spreads here, and if the Lakers-Charlotte game was any indication, maybe it's time to take dogs here tonight, Dexter, as Cleveland, 13-point road favorites tonight at Brooklyn. Boston, 7-point road favorites tonight at Philadelphia. And then the Knicks at home are 12-point home favorites against the Chicago Bulls. So, I mean, I look at these 3 games, Dexter. I mean, the one that sticks out to me is maybe taking the favorite would be Boston because it seems like Philadelphia is like just going through the motions here and waiting for the season to end. I don't think they got any hope. But what about these other lines?
You and I are on the same page with Boston. That'd be the one I would take. As far as the other lines go, look, I think the next safest bet probably would be Cleveland to smash Brooklyn. Brooklyn, not good. Ben Simmons bought out. They are trying to figure things out behind D'Angelo Russell at point guard, so they're still a work in progress. But Brooklyn plays tough. Jordy Fernandez has that team playing really tough. And then the Bulls versus the Knicks. The Bulls have given the Knicks problems this year. So that's a line I would actually stay away from. I might take the Bulls in the points. There's also no Josh Hart in this contest for the Knicks. That's an adjustment. He's their sort of engine that makes them go on the offensive glass and also helps the offense go. So I might like the Bulls there as an underdog if you're going to take them in the points.
All right. Well, Dexter will enjoy all the NBA games tonight. My goodness. Thank goodness the NBA is back. we need some more basketball out there. A couple of weeks away from NCAA tournament here, but to not have any NBA at all is a little tough on us. All right. Good to see you, Dexter. We'll talk again soon. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Craig. Appreciate you, man.
All right. Dexter Henry on with us, talking some NBA. One of the top stories today in Major League Baseball. Contract extension for a manager announced today. Sort of weird. Not before spring training, not after spring training, but just like smack almost in the middle before the games begin. Aaron Boone signs a 2-year contract extension as he will remain with the Yankees. If you want to learn more about our programming lineup or all the point spreads or things against the spread, maybe some leans, which way to go, download the SportsGrid app. It's available for iOS and Android. And by the way, it's absolutely free. So take out your phone, scan that QR code, and that'll give you a link to download it. It is the SportsGrid app. You can also watch our shows on the app as well. When we come back next, it is the Mexico Open, and they are starting today. But I have not heard of anybody playing in this, so I'm going to need Brady Kannon to help me out with the odds. Don't go away.
I talked about AZ Fun a lot, folks, and said when she got back from that knee injury, remember, it's the second ACL tear she's had in her career, that she was going to be a difference maker. UConn is plus 330. They're not going to get challenged again in the Big East until they come out of conference play in the conference tournament. I still like them at plus 330 to win a national championship.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
You watch playoff games. The playoffs are all that matter. The league's got an issue. They just don't want to admit it. They brag about how huge they are, how global they are. Ratings are through the roof. Profits are through the roof. I mean, between the NBA and NHL lying about their ratings and the money they make, I'm sick and tired of it.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. We got the Mexico Open coming up, and Brady Kannon is going to break it down for us. He has been red hot. I mean, that's just all there is to say with these top 10s and top 20s and the winners of these tournaments. I don't know if he can keep this up the entire golf season, but here we are in February, and he came on the show last week. Ludwig Oberg is someone he's talked about a ton, and even last week. And the runner-up, I believe, was somebody that he mentioned too, and that guy was like 55-1, but Brady, welcome back to the show. Oberg wins. the Genesis Open. This guy is just on fire like you thus far.
Well, yeah. And, full disclosure here, credit to our friends, the Stewart brothers as well. Keith Stewart and Cam Stewart were both on Ludwig Oberg last week. You're right. I was on the runner-up, Maverick McNeely. But, Keith Stewart is a very valuable friend here because he typically travels to these sites. And he was on the property at Torrey Pines last week. And I really liked the look of Oberg when his odds drifted all the way up to like 25, 28, close to 30 to 1. And I was like, he was coming off of the flu. He had been, ill. And I said, is this guy healthy? Because these odds are out of whack. And he goes, I'm down here watching him on the driving range. He's striping it. He looks great. I love the kid this week. And I said, okay, that's all I needed to hear is that he's healthy, because I liked him, but it was unknown. I didn't know what his physical status was, but hearing it on site from Keith, I was like, okay, I'm going to add him to my card. And then, of course, came on your show last Thursday and gave him out. And you're right. We had number 1 and number 2 coming down the stretch.
Crazy.
We were feeling pretty good about cashing a ticket.
Yeah, 55 to 1 was McNeely last week. All right, so Brady has been great, and this is no disrespect to Brady's picks whatsoever. But if you win this week, if you get a winner this week, that's it. I don't know what I will say to you next week, because these guys, this is a week off. Let's just keep it real. It is a week off for the people on the PGA Tour. You got the Players Championship coming up. That is a big one. The Masters coming up too. So, what are we doing here this week? Because other than I'm looking at this and I see Kurt Kitayama is 22 to 1. I know who he is. Okay. Beyond that, there's an opportunity here to make some huge money if you can pick a winner here at this tournament. Look at these odds here. Just the winner, everyone is basically 20 to 1 or more.
Yeah, no, you're completely right. And it's kind of the bridge here. The West Coast swing has ended. We're going to head your way next week. The Florida swing begins, and we've got a little bit of a tweener here for the Mexico Open at Vedanta Vallarta. And it's kind of a mixed bag between journeyman tour veterans, guys that have come over from the European Tour that are trying to make their way on the PGA Tour, and up-and-coming rising stars that have just recently graduated from the Korn Ferry Tour. It's actually really an exciting tournament when you're looking at guys that are going to possibly be the future of golf. Jake Knapp last year won this tournament, and he's now kind of a regular name and one of the more star players that could have a bright future in front of him. So, the next Will Zalatoris or something might be lurking in the weeds here. And there are a lot of young guys in this event that a lot of people have landed on this week that expect to do well. Now, you mentioned Kitayama, Akshay Bhatia, some of these guys that are at the top of the leaderboard, or top of the odds board, rather. I didn't bet on them this week because they've never been in that position before. They've never been the best player in the field, and they've never had these expectations. So I went for a little further down the board. The shortest shot I took was Sam Stevens, who's kind of an up-and-coming rising star, who's been playing great on the PGA Tour as of late. Kevin Yu I took, who we landed on correctly last October at the Sanderson Farms when he won that event. And then Alex Smalley at 42 to 1. He's kind of a better than average, somewhat of a tour veteran, been around a handful of years, but this week he's one of the better players in the field and better than 40 to 1. I thought he was value. CT Pan has been around forever, got him at 60 to 1. Lanto Griffin has been up and down and around for a long time and done very well on these coastal designs and whatnot. Took him at 80 to 1. And then a couple of long bombs. Again, tour veterans, Hayden Springer at 120 and Joel Damon at 125. Right now, we've got 4 guys on the course. Our other 3 guys are teeing off in the afternoon, but the 4 that we have that went off early, they're all under par. So we're off to a good start. But, if anything this week, take a look at who's doing well, and maybe that helps you forecast into who might be doing well a year from now or even 6 months from now. This is kind of the NBA's rising stars on Friday during All-Star Weekend. This is golf's version here in Mexico.
Yeah, Damon hurt us last year at one point, so I can't pull the trigger again there. I think he bombed one turn. I don't. His name looks familiar because I remember he hurt us last year. Okay, so I think the 2 biggest upcoming ones are the Players Championship and the Masters after that. I know the Florida swing's still important, but unfortunately those, in my neck of the woods in Palm Beach, and the old one that used to be in Doral don't have the cachet that they used to have. So the Players, I think, is next up, best up, and then we got Augusta. Have you put in anything on Augusta with this being less than 2 months away?
I have. And, I was doing some research last night just to spit out the numbers. I always like to look at Kapalua, where they start the year, the Sentry, and see who does well there. And oftentimes that'll dictate a play that I make on the Masters. There's an amazing correlation between success at Kapalua and the Masters. There's been 27 tournaments to kick off the year at Kapalua since 1999. Of those 27 tournaments, 10 of the winners have been Masters champions. And there's also an incredible connection with Riviera, where they typically play the Genesis Invitational. You go back to 1992, 36 editions of the LA Open or the Genesis. 16 have been won by Masters champions, 44% of the time. And then another connection even further with St. Andrews, the old course, where they play the British Open every 5 or 6 years. Since 1970, there's been 10 British Opens played at St. Andrews. 6 of them have been won by Masters champions. 3 of them have been won by Kapalua champions. So between Riviera, St. Andrews, Augusta, and Kapalua, there's this incredible connection. The same faces pop up year in and year out. So when I saw Hideki Matsuyama and Colin Morikawa finish 1-2 at Kapalua, I took them immediately for the Masters. Of course, Hideki has a green jacket. They've both done incredibly well there. I expect that to carry over. And then I added one guy just earlier this week, Tommy Fleetwood, who finished 3rd at the Masters last year, and in 2022 was 4th at St. Andrews. So there's my card for the Masters so far: Fleetwood, Matsuyama, and Morikawa.
And by the way, folks, those bets, the best bets on those is getting those in now before the Masters. Thanks, Brady.
I talked about AZ Fun a lot, folks, and said when she got back from that knee injury, remember, it's the second ACL tear she's had in her career, that she was going to be a difference maker. UConn is plus 330. They're not going to get challenged again in the Big East until they come out of conference play in a conference tournament. I still like them at plus 330 to win a national championship.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
You watch playoff games. The playoffs are all that matter, and the league's got an issue. They just don't want to admit it. They brag about how huge they are, how global they are, ratings are through the roof, profits are through the roof. I mean, between the NBA and NHL lying about their ratings and the money they make, I'm sick and tired of it.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. As we end with some last licks, we will get into a very rare rescinded fine in the National Football League. You almost never see this happen. A new coffee shop for a Major League Baseball player, and hey, wouldn't you know, a new gig for me too. It's time now for some last licks. I mean, this is super rare in the NFL. Like, let's think about how many times on this show and on other shows we talk about players getting fined by the National Football League for different reasons. Happens all the time. Players getting suspended. Sometimes those are shortened, but very rarely do you ever see a fine levied in the NFL and then hear about it being rescinded, which makes this so rare. And think about this. How long ago did this happen for this to get taken away? What am I talking about? Joe Mixon, you may remember him, of the Houston Texans, had a couple of different, let's call them incidents after games, where he said things or alluded to things about the referees and ended up getting fined. In fact, he had one for $25,000, which was, as he said, a comment about the referees that he did not even make. Well, the NFL said, yeah, I mean, Joe, you're right. They must have reviewed it, and here we are, a week and a half after the Super Bowl, and they took away this fine. $25,000. Good job, NFL. They reviewed Mixon's comments and thought that they were not against the referees and took them away. Now, I understand in the grand scheme of things for these players in sports, $25,000 may not be a lot of money to you and I. It's a lot of money. But good job here by the NFL, taking something away. You almost never see it. And, you know, suspensions, sometimes they go from 6 games to 5 games. But usually when you got to pay, you got to pay. And in this case, good job by the National Football League reviewing and making sure that Mixon can now take his $25,000 and do whatever he wants with it. Would he buy a coffee shop? Is that something you can get for $25,000? No, that's going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars, but not for Nestor Cortez. Nestor Cortez, who once upon a time had a little coffee thing going with the New York Yankees, has brought his coffee game to Arizona. Now, you may say Milwaukee because that's where he's playing, but they're in Arizona, and they're at spring training. And Nasty Nestor's coffee truck, shop, whatever you want to call it, has made an appearance. Good job by Nestor endearing to his buddies here. Now, the one thing that comes to mind to me is here in South Florida, where Jimmy Butler had his big face coffee. Jimmy Butler no longer a member of the Miami Heat. But yes, good stuff from Nestor Cortez, because again, all the players pretty much drinking coffee in the morning. Now all they got to do is go over to Nestor's little food truck area there, and I assume get their free coffee as well that Nestor Cortez is paying for now that he's moved from the Yankees. And by the way, probably going to be a pretty good pitcher, I would assume, for the Milwaukee Brewers this season. Well, they by the way, in spring training, food trucks, supremely popular around spring training places. As soon as the practice is over, they put the food trucks in the back, they get the food. But in this case, it is coffee. So Nestor's Cafe is back. All right, now for those of you who follow me on social media, or you follow SportsGrid on social media, you may have seen the breaking news coming from me yesterday. Rare piece of breaking news about me. Hate to talk about myself here, but we're going to do it to end the show. So yesterday, I made the announcement that I will be doing some pre- and post-game work on the FanDuel Sports Network that is the broadcast partner of the Miami Marlins. So this upcoming season, I would encourage you to watch SportsGrid. Let me not take away from SportsGrid. But if you are interested potentially in the Marlins, you may see your guy who's hosting SportsGrid every single day do some pre- and post-game work this season. So, of course, I want to thank everybody involved with the FanDuel Sports Network and all the people that are out there that love baseball that want to see me more on the air. I don't know why you would, but also definitely want to say my thanks here to the great people at SportsGrid as well. And certainly Lou and Mike and Jeremy and Charles and Greg and everybody involved in the front office team, the executive team, as they say, for giving me the green light to go ahead and do this. So it does not affect NewsWire one bit. You'll see me every single day, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern. I ain't doing any day games over there. It's all going to be, late afternoon or evening games. So a double dose of me for those of you who are interested in baseball. Again, thanks to everybody at SportsGrid for allowing me to take this next step with baseball. And that'll do it for the show today. Want to remind you, coming up at 3 o'clock Eastern, no stranger to the NBA and college basketball. We got Scott Farrell coast to coast. I know Smiley's coming up. He's probably got some stuff here on the upcoming Mexico Open. Game time decisions tonight at 6, in-game live game day tonight. And then Gabe will recap the Four Nations finals. So stay tuned for that as well. Thanks to Dexter Henry and Joe Madden for coming on, Matt Lutovsky and Brady Kannon as well. For our director, Luke, my producer, Frank, I'm Craig Mish. Enjoy that great hockey game tonight. It should be a classic. We will recap and lead with that tomorrow and tell you exactly what happened on our Friday edition of NewsWire. Also, Tim Healy from Newsday covering the Mets will be with us as well. Have a great Thursday, everyone. See you then.